She appeared to be just another shattered woman, leaving behind everything she had ever known, carrying nothing but a worn-out dress and a leather suitcase on her back. But inside that battered case, Magnolia Voss carried enough cash to buy 3 ranches the size of the one she was walking away from. She had just been thrown out by her own son, and within 24 hours. Sterling Maddox would realize that was the worst mistake of his entire life. It wasn't just about losing his mother, it was about losing control over the very thing he thought he owned. The morning light cast long shadows across the Maddox land. Sterling stood on the porch, his jaw set like granite behind him. His wife, Clementine, stood with folded arms, a smile of cold satisfaction on her lips, watching the old woman struggle with her suitcase at the gate. The leather case looked like it might fall apart at any second. Held together only by cracked straps and sheer will. "She's finally leaving," Clementine whispered, her voice dripping with sweet venom. The same venom that had been poisoning Sterling's mind for months. "We can't be weighed down by dead weight anymore." Sterling's hands gripped the porch railing, his knuckles turning white. He wanted to shout, to call her back, to stop the woman who had raised him on this land, the woman who had soothed his fevers and taught him to ride. But Clementine's words echoed again and again. The ranch was bleeding money. His mother was too old to help. They needed every cent for expansion. Magnolia kept walking, her silver hair catching the dawn light, the same faded blue dress she'd worn to church for years clinging to her frame, her shoes cracked, her posture proud, her entire presence radiating loss and dignity. "Look at her," Clementine whispered, wrapping her arm around Sterling's waist. What could she possibly be taking with her in that pathetic little bag? Old photographs, moth-eaten quilts. Sterling watched as his mother paused at the gate, set the bag down, and took a breath. Her shoulders sagged for a moment, and he almost moved toward her. Most remembered the woman who had carried this ranch after his father's death, but Clementine's fingers dug into his arm. "She made her choice," she said. "She refused to sign over her share." "This is on her." That bag, Sterling thought, looked heavier than it should be. Odd for something that was only supposed to hold trinkets, but he told himself it was just her being dramatic. Again, she always made everything harder than it had to be. And so, as Magnolia picked up her suitcase and walked away down the dusty road, a cold satisfaction settled in his chest. The ranch would finally be his. Profitable, clean. Clementine was right. This was business, not personal. What Sterling didn't realize was that Magnolia's slow walk wasn't that of a broken woman. It was the walk of someone with a secret so powerful it would bring his entire world crashing down. Because in that suitcase, and in the documents she left behind, Sterling Maddox had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. 3 hours after Magnolia vanished beyond the ridge, Sterling found the first letter hidden in his father's old desk. Aged parchment, sealed in red wax, his name written in his mother's handwriting, but the ink was too fresh. "What's that?" Clementine asked, peering over his shoulder. Sterling cracked the seal, unfolded the page, and felt the blood freeze in his veins. The message was simple, but it hit like a gunshot. "You never had the ranch to give away." It read, "Check the courthouse records. I inherited it from my father, not you. You've been playing cowboy with land that was never yours for 15 years out of love, but love has limits. Son." The letter slipped from Sterling's fingers. He dropped into the old leather chair, the one used by 3 generations of Maddox men, but after reading that letter, he wasn't sure he belonged among them. "She's lying," Clementine said, but her voice trembled now, lacking its usual bite. "Your father would have never done that. He promised you the ranch." Sterling's mind raced, flashing through every decision he'd made, every loan, every deal, every paper signed in the name of ownership. But the truth clawed at him. His father had never once said it outright. He had just assumed. Hoofbeats echoed outside. Sterling glanced through the window and saw a familiar man dismounting a black horse-bound carter. The family attorney, carrying a satchel and a look that could quiet thunder. "Mr. Maddox," he said, stepping onto the porch, "we need to talk. Your mother asked me to deliver some important legal matters." Clementine grabbed Sterling's arm. "Don't listen to him," she hissed. "Whatever she's pulling, we can fight it." But Sterling stepped toward the door, suddenly feeling the full weight of everything he had ignored. Boone stepped into the kitchen, papers in hand. the air filled with the sound of flapping documents and falling illusions. "Your mother wanted you to have these before the bank opens tomorrow morning," Boone said. "Which bank?" Sterling asked. His voice low. Boone adjusted his glasses. "She's been making the mortgage payments for the last 5 years. Payments you didn't even know existed." Sterling's world tilted. The kitchen swayed. All he believed about ownership, control, legacy, it all cracked like rotted wood in a flood, and somewhere out there, his mother walked with nothing more than a worn suitcase. Except it wasn't nothing, it was everything. Boone laid the records on the table: insurance payments, tax bills, notarized contracts, all signed by Magnolia Vosal, covering debts that would have claimed the ranch years ago. Sterling's hands trembled as he followed the figures. "How?" he whispered. "How did she pay this?" Boone opened another folder. "She's been managing your father's investments in her name, quietly, efficiently." Clementine grabbed the papers, eyes wide. "What investments? She never had money." Boone met her gaze calmly. "Mrs. Maddox," he said, "your husband's mother has been a very wealthy woman for quite some time. She chose to live modestly. She chose to protect this land without recognition, without praise, and until this morning, without fail." Sterling felt like he was drowning. His mother, the same woman in the same old church dress, had kept his entire life afloat, and he had cast her out. "There's more," Boone said, pulling one final page from the satchel. "Your mother left specific instructions. Now that she's been forced off the property, all financial assistance ends immediately. The next mortgage payment is due in 6 days, and without it, the bank will begin foreclosure proceedings." Silence filled the kitchen, broken only by the soft tick of the mantel clock. Sterling did the math in his head. They had less than $60 between them. The livestock wasn't ready for market. The coffee tin wouldn't cover a week's groceries, let alone $837. Clementine looked at him, eyes wide now, panic beginning to bloom. "We can call her," she said. "We can apologize, ask her to come back." Boone gathered his papers. "Your mother was very clear," he said, and I quote, "Sterling made his decision. Now he can live with it." The attorney turned, mounted his horse, and rode off without another word. Sterling stood there, staring out across the ranch he had called his for 38 years. Every building, every fence post, every blade of grass suddenly felt foreign. He had lived here his entire life, and yet he hadn't known a thing. The most horrifying query still stood, not responded to. Had his mom been covertly rich enough to rescue the ranch each month? What precisely was that worn item she was carrying? A leather suitcase. More significantly, what was her intended destination? By sunset, Sterling had saddled his horse. He was riding along the dusty path his mom had taken that very morning. He moved forward out of desperation, but with every mile, the truth of his circumstances became heavier. He was under 6 days away from finding $800 or risk losing all 3 generations of what the Maddox men had built. The path led toward Millbrook, the closest city, but Sterling knew his mother had no friends there. She had kept to herself for years, rarely stepping beyond the general store, so why would an old woman with a heavy suitcase go that way at the crossroads? He spotted old Pete Hutchkins pulling his wagon back from town. Pete's weathered face lit up as Sterling rode closer. "You just missed her this afternoon," Pete called. "Strange thing, she hired Jimmy Caldwell to take her to Silver Creek, 2 days' ride. For a woman her age." Sterling's blood froze. Silver Creek. That's where his father's estranged brother, Uncle Thomas, had vanished to 40 years ago. After a bitter fallout, Sterling had always believed he was dead. "Did she say why she was going there?" Sterling asked. Pete scratched his gray beard. "Not really, but she made Jimmy stop at the telegraph office first, sent a long message. Paid extra to make sure it went through fast. A telegraph. His mother wasn't fleeing. She was coordinating. This was no desperate move by a broken woman. This was strategy." Sterling kicked his horse into a gallop toward Silver Creek, galloping beneath a sky heavy with night and doubt. If he pushed hard enough, he could catch her by midnight. But as he rode, doubt crept in like a fog. What if Uncle Thomas was still alive? What if he and Magnolia had stayed in touch all these years? His father had refused to speak of the fight, always silent, always angry. What if that fight had something to do with his mother's hidden fortune? The moon was high when Sterling finally saw the lights of Silver Creek. The town was mostly asleep, except one place, a large house on the hill, glowing warm yellow from every window. He had never seen Uncle Thomas's house, but he knew in his gut that's where he'd find his mother. The house was too big, too rich, not the home of a simple rancher. This was wealth, real wealth. As he crept closer, he heard voices. His mother's voice, clear, firm, unrecognizable in strength. Gone was the weary tone he remembered. She sounded like a general giving orders. Then came the man's voice. "Are you sure about this, Maggie? Once we start, there's no going back." Her answer made Sterling's hands tremble. "Thomas, this has been 15 years in the making," she said. "It's time." Sterling dismounted. Heart pounding, he crept to the wide front window. There she was, Magnolia Voss, seated at a grand table, across from a man who could only be Uncle Thomas. But this wasn't the worn-down woman who had left the ranch that morning. This woman was regal. Her suitcase sat open beside her. Stacks of documents, thick cloth-wrapped bundles. Sterling couldn't make out the details, but he could feel the weight of it. The boy never knew. Thomas said Robert should have told him. Robert was too proud, Magnolia replied. He thought he was protecting Sterling by keeping him ignorant, but preparing someone and protecting them aren't the same thing. Sterling felt the earth tilt beneath him. A mine. His father had owned a silver mine. 3 years of production. The money, the answers, it was all here. Thomas leaned in. "You're sure the papers are in order?" "Maggie, the transfer documents." Magnolia reached into the suitcase, pulled out a thick bundle. "Everything Robert left me. The mining rights, production, logs, bank contracts, and the old cash reserves." Then she said it. "Barrett, the type that guarantees maintain their promise." Sterling's breath caught. She opened a packet of cash. His jaw dropped. He had never seen so much money in one place, enough to buy 10 ranches, 1.4 million. She said, "Quietly earned since Robert died. I've saved every penny." Waiting for the right moment to teach Sterling responsibility and respect. His knees almost buckled. His mother hadn't just been wealthy, she had been holding a fortune, and he had cast her out like trash. Now she turned to Thomas. Now the question is whether Sterling deserves to inherit Robert's legacy, based on today.